All right, y'all. All right, y'all. We have some awesome questions here. I just kind of briefly glanced through and saw some good ones, so we're going to do some Q&A. I do appreciate your comments and your interactions with my videos. It does help the algorithm show it to new people. These YouTubers these days, including myself, are competing with lots of AI slop. So any help I can get is great. But more importantly, if you make comments, I usually read them. I try to get back when I can. It does help me, and sometimes I make videos about certain comments and so forth. So your interactions with the videos, your watching them, your comments, all of that is very much appreciated. Your engagement, I guess, is the word. So let's get rolling. This one's from Puppy Girl. I like this name, Puppy Girl. It's one of my new favorite usernames. It's not as good as Ball Smasher and Riz Master, but it's a good one. It's cuter. It says, "I love your videos so much. You are a beautiful soul." Well, thank you. Next one is George's son, mom? George's son. Anyway. Can this type of thing be done if my goal is to work through emotions? Because that's not an equanimous position. In such case, is it better to turn attention toward the belief that there is something to be fixed and the I who wants to fix that, or the sufferer? This is from a video called "Simplicity is Key When It Comes to Emotion Work." So it's saying, basically this person's calling themselves out in a way and saying, like, there is a part of me that just wants to get through the emotion. I want to work through the emotion, right? And that's not an equanimous position, right? Rather than being okay with the emotion and being one with the emotion. So it's actually a good insight that you have, that there is something there that's saying the emotion's not okay. I got to work through it. With that said, it's maybe not as big of a deal as you might think. That's really just a thought, ultimately, that says, I want to work through these. What do you really want, right? What do people really want? Well, often you want equanimity. You want peace, right? So it doesn't matter if you say working through emotions or working with emotions or exploring emotions. Not really. What matters more is how you interact, right? Like what are you actually doing? Now, you did mention inquiry. Like, should I inquire into the belief that something needs to be fixed itself? You totally can do this. And what you'll find, and you can still do it, like even if I tell you the answer, it's still very worthwhile to keep looking at these beliefs that come up, mostly because they just put you in your head in the moment. They just kind of put you up in your head into analysis, into sort of distraction. But what they lead to ultimately is realizing that these are thoughts that say, there's something to fix, or I'd be better off without emotions, or whatever the thoughts are saying. Ultimately, you just find that these are just thoughts. And when you see a thought as a thought, you see the tendency to grab or believe a certain thought, then you've kind of broken the spell in that moment of dissociating from body sense, from what's felt, which is where you're going one way or another, right? Non-dual realization has to be a deeply felt sense. If it's not deeply felt, then it's not non-dualistic. It's dissociated, right? It's also not intimate. It's also not settled if you're not in full contact with the body sense, or in good contact with the body sense. So ultimately you're going there anyway. So whether you just train yourself to feel, to really feel and notice when attention is moving from the direct experience, the feeling sense, to thoughts, just noticing when that happens. And then if it's habitual with a certain thought, noticing, okay, this thought tends to pull me into my head, right? Noticing it as such, again, the thought will often diffuse it a little bit. And if you notice it enough times, you'll actually stop triggering on a certain belief. Yeah. Now, understand that doing that is not always non-feeling, right? Sometimes when you really start looking into certain beliefs you have and you really challenge them, often you can break through these kind of barriers. And these may be trauma barriers. They may be certain kinds of perceptual barriers that are preventing you from feeling traumatic experiences again. Or maybe I should just say feeling emotions that have been chronically repressed around traumatic experiences. So know that doing these kinds of inquiry around emotion are very valuable, but it's not it's not like avoiding feeling. In fact, it can break you through to more feeling, and it can be surprising sometimes. So just know, if you do these kinds of inquiries, it's great. And you also sometimes will break through to like other kinds of emotions that surprise you. You may suddenly feel fear. You may suddenly feel anger, shame, right? These things will come through, and it's totally okay that they do. Now, to step back from the question entirely and just kind of answer it from the beginning, ultimately, what really is operating here is there's this mechanism, and I'm just going to call it resistance. I call it resistance frequently, but there's this mechanism that is subtly avoiding, strangely, everything. It's trying to avoid everything. It's trying to avoid the emotion, and it's trying to avoid seeing the thoughts clearly. So there's something a little dissociative and resistant, that's going on in our process often when we're at this stage of things, when we're doing shadow work and so forth. So know that that's ultimately what you're going to dispel one way or another. You can look at it directly or try to find it directly, like, where is the resistance pattern here? Where is resistance arising right now? And you may find it directly and feel this like intense energetic experience, something that's like really wants to jump, wants to move away, wants to distract, feels restless. Yeah, you may find that, and that's okay. May not go away right away, and that's okay too. Just know, if you find it, it's intense usually. So yeah, ultimately what's going to happen is that resistance tendency, the more clearly you see and feel everything, the more clear you are on a thought being a thought and a feeling being a feeling, and being willing to actually come into contact with all of it, the more that resistance will at first reveal itself and then settle. Ultimately, it will settle more and more. So that's kind of how this whole thing goes. That's the arc. That's the overarching arc of this. It's not the emotion that's a problem. I know there's a belief that says I want to get through the emotions because I just don't want to feel them. But the emotion itself isn't what's triggering. I promise. It seems like it is, but it's not. It's the resistance to it, which is a kind of it's kind of a hybrid. It's like a hybrid of sort of thought, belief, and trying to move away from sensation or emotion, right? That's what's making the emotion seem untenable or, whatever, uncomfortable, intolerable, whatever. So good question. Sorry I beat the crap out of that horse, but I thought it was a good thing to dive into. All right, we've got Solid Snack. Solid Snack says, this goes right over my head. I mean, yeah, the sensations are very obvious, and even thoughts seem to cease for a while when focusing on them. That's it then? What is this big shift or the big fuss about awakening then? Also, really hope my terrible joint pain will go away soon. So this is a video called Sensation Will Set You Free. So this is largely why I do talk about Kensho or First Awakening as, generally speaking, the first orientation or first goal. Because without that, most people, I certainly won't be able to stay in direct experience very long at all. And it will feel uninteresting. The mind will just get bored. And that boredom will, because there's still thought identification, that boredom will pull you back into thought very quickly. Now, you can try to break the spell directly if you're that kind of stubborn, rebellious person like I was. You may just be like, no, I'm going to stay here and feel this discomfort of not grabbing another thought. Even though my mind is going, there's nothing here. What's the point? This is silly, right? That's a thought. That's a thought. That's a thought. Staying with this sensation without grabbing into one more thought, that will become intense very quickly, right? So my point is, yes, you can just stay in direct sensation as an approach, but it's very unlikely you will. You'll just get distracted back into thoughts very quickly, right? Not everybody, but considering you're saying this, I'm thinking that's where you are. So that's why I recommend approaches toward First Awakening first, generally speaking, and then go from there. Okay. This one is from Minui. It's one of my shorts. It says, shadow work sounds similar to what the Quakers are meant to do in their meetings, like silently reflecting on inner darkness by exposing it to the inner light and slowly, week by week, letting yourself grow out of the darkness into the light. I love that. I want to interview a Quaker. I want to interview a Quaker who's enlightened or something. Do Quakers have, it's kind of a monastic order anyway, right? I was going to say, do they have some kind of monastic or monk type person or shaman or Maybe they have the preacher man. I don't know how that works, but it'd be interesting to talk to somebody who really has insight and is in that type of society. Neolithites. It says we've known this stuff for centuries. It's just been shrouded in religious baggage like darkness and conviction for sin and repentance and enlightenment and such like. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't disagree with you. And I think there probably are some Neolithite cultures and some native cultures and stuff that have degrees of this resonance built into their process. And there are probably awake people in those spaces. Doesn't mean everybody in that religion's awake, but from what I've seen of Quakers and Neolithites, they often seem very present, actually. Very present, pretty damn equanimous. Yeah, if you're going to go find a society to live in, that's not a bad one. The Christianity part of it, the dogma of that can probably, I would have a challenge with, but yeah, the simplicity, the style of living, and this kind of stuff you're talking about, I find it really appealing. There you go. I wonder if people can join Quaker communities. I know, like, to leave it, you have to go through a process or whatever, and some people do, but I wonder if people can, like, go join, like, hey, I want to be a Quaker. I want to be one of your flock. Okay. This one's from Rachel. I remember sitting on a park bench and seeing that I'm a string of thoughts, maybe for 5 minutes at the most. It definitely felt like a revelation or a new experience, let's say. Within a few days, a tragedy happened in my life. I'm curious if those two things are somehow linked, but maybe that's just more thought and ego. And this is from a video called Can Awakening Actually Happen? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Seeing that you're just a string of thoughts is a huge, important step. It's a key insight. It sometimes comes right before awakening or with awakening, but that specific insight is a little bit more like recognition to me, generally. I don't know your experience. You may have had an awakening. I don't know. But yeah, it's usually something that comes before awakening. And then it's very curious, like, oh, what I take myself to be is a string of thoughts. But again, the shift at the level of identity is the key to awakening. And it's noticeable. It's a very distinct thing from just noticing something and going, oh, that's interesting, right? Now, that's not just a conceptual noticing, by the way. It is something more than that, but it's not necessarily a shift in identity in and of itself, usually. Thank you for your comment. This one's from Martin. It says, Descartes, quote, I think therefore I am, end quote, meets Nisargadatta's powerful rebuttal. You are prior to the idea, I am. Camp yourself there prior to the words I am. Nisargadatta was very clear on this, and I really like it. I think, in my opinion, this may be like total heresy for the Advaita community or whatever, but he seemed on that point much clearer than Ramana, at least from what I've read. Ramana kind of stopped at the I am sense, it seemed like, at least in what I saw of him writing. Nisargadatta made very clear distinctions about that, and that he said if you regress properly, the I am sense will disappear. Pretty good point. It's a pretty clear pointing there. So I like it. Okay, we've got Trevor Furnace. This one's on my video, Dying on the Cross. This is a Sasha Stevens interview. She's one of the most popular interviewees I have on my channel. People love her. I love her. She's just a blast. She's very articulate, very vulnerable and honest. And her videos are awesome. It says, the comment, everything needs to be felt. Every moment contains the whole universe, and the story of self distracts from the urgency of feeling everything. Got it. Yeah. And I interviewed another person named Barb, and she said, you have to be utterly willing. And once you're utterly willing, there's nothing that will stand in your way or nothing that can stand in your way. I love that. This one's from Gadamoli. Just noticed as I thought about it when you asked, how has hesitation ever helped you? That addictions actually have this hesitation tone to them. It's so clear that when the time comes to engage in addictive behavior, the hesitationless decision is to not go there. But because it's unfamiliar, it's more comfortable to hesitate, backtrack from this clear decision, and gaslight into thinking just this once more. Without hesitation, these addictions would just be walking through. Oh, I'm sorry. Without hesitation, these addictions would just be walked right through. That's fascinating, actually. That's a really good observation, and that tracks for me. I think that's very accurate. This one's from Mitri C. It's like I'm constantly simulating myself with thought in daily life. No, right? And it's so uncomfortable and exhausting. I agree. I would say this. This is kind of the Eckhart Tolle question, right? That he described his awakening hinging on. It's like, okay, and this is important to see this. Yes, the thoughts seem to be the simulation that tells the story of you, sure. But who's the myself? Who's the myself, right? It says, see, it's like I'm constantly simulating myself through the thought in daily life, as if I'm here and the thoughts are there and I'm using those to simulate this, yeah, in a way. The point I'm making is, are there two of you? What's the one that's being simulated? Can it be simulated? Where is it? What is it made out of? Can you totally rest in that, seeing that the thoughts are simulating nothing but thought, essentially, right? Because they can say anything. Does that make sense? That's a good inquiry point. It's also a lot of suffering, and I get it, and I felt that way as well. I felt exactly like that. I totally get it. Yeah. Okay, this is a really good point. This goes back to one of the earlier questions. When I sit, I tend to do what just feels right, which ends up with a lot of just resting in sensation, but also noticing the gross thought and looking towards whatever's more subtle, and it feels like me, as well as some looking at the looking itself attempts, and also letting go of my volition as best I can. It feels like this is a necessarily long process, although I don't truly know that. It's just so exhausting and subtly, constantly painful to like exist or something like that. I really like what you're doing, but I think you're relegating your energy to like a few different practices. That's what it feels like. I'm inclined to dial you in to one, and that is noticing the gross thoughts, looking toward whatever's more subtle, and what feels like me. I'd say notice the gross thoughts, and then notice the subtle thoughts are subtle as well, are thoughts as well, right? Including this thing that kind of summarizes it. It's like, oh, it's so grueling. It takes so long. Thought. Do the same thing you're doing with gross thoughts, but get into the subtle thought structure. And don't worry about this other stuff for now, like resting in sensations and all that, because yes, there is huge value to resting in sensation. But if you're really up against awakening, like I was talking about earlier, then the sensations are unstable, basically, right? Like it's not going to trigger the awakening usually. But this inquiry, this real close observation of how thoughts, one by one, are simulating you or seem to be simulating you. What you're doing is you're experimenting with what happens when you don't let the simulation take in that moment, in that thought. And then just see what's the next thought. Bring it on. Well, the next thought is, well, I'm simulating myself. That's another thought. Then the next thought is, oh, this is such a long process. That's another thought. Well, then maybe it's a short process. Well, that's another thought, right? See, all these thoughts keep defining time, space, self, and other. They seem to. Don't give them traction, right? This is kind of like the one-pointed approach I talk about. That's what I recommend for you. I think you're in a good place. Just get a little bit more leverage and focus. Nice job. This is waves. Are memories, imagery, and physical pain not acute, just thoughts too? The noticing, this is a slippery one. The noticing of them is thought. And it happens very quickly. Okay? I don't want to beat that one up too much because it just gets slippery. At some point, it becomes obvious. And that was part of the awakening for me, actually. I do remember that. I'd be sitting there and it'd be like, oh, I'm getting tired. Oh, the noticing of tiredness is a thought. It's a summary of something. And what it's pointing to may not even be there. I really don't fucking know, right? The noticing of a sensation in the body, like, oh, my butt hurts from sitting so long. Well, that's a thought, right? What's the next thought? So I became fascinated with not this metaphysical question of, is there really sensation? Is there really a body or really form? That's later on stuff. And you don't need to contemplate it that way anyway. I was fascinated with, how is a thought right now distorting my experience again and again and again? It's like this magician that just keep playing a trick on me over and over and over. And everywhere I'd look, they'd be waving that magic wand. So uncomfortable, right? That's what I became fascinated with. And that's what I kept digging into. So that's why I recommend looking. It's interesting. A lot of these comments are along the same lines. Puppy Girl, again, says, thank you for this video. I've been getting a lot of doubt thoughts recently. It's from Can Awakening Actually Happen? Yeah, so doubt thoughts, again, along these lines. Doubt thoughts are those thoughts that feel so familiar that we don't always realize they're thoughts. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, I can't. Not me. It doesn't work for me, right? You may not even be fully thinking the thought. It just has a feel to it after a while because it's like habituated thought soup or quicksand. Puppy Girl, what kind of puppy is there? Do you have a puppy? I see puppy and I get happy because I like dogs. Okay, we've got Glaze. By the time you notice something happening, become aware of the circumstances, it's already in the past. That's me. They're quoting me from this thing called, Are Some Things Unacceptable? So we never see what is because it's always in the past. Yes. No, that's not true. You do see what is. But I want to be really precise here. You see what is, but the thought of what is always a thought, and it's not actually it. Yes? And this more precisely and more, this is very subtle, but the seer of it itself is a thought. That's ultimately what happens is you realize, fuck, the seer of the scene itself is a thought. And there's no way to explain that until you realize it, because it's so easy to take the scene. Well, it's so easy to take the one seeing for what it sees. It just seems like it's the same thing. It's not though, right? So you peel that away, and then all of a sudden the scene is really just the scene. But it's a big deal in a way. When I say it's a big deal, it's very remarkable to people who when it happens. I will say, I do bump into people quite a bit at retreats and so forth that have the shift in real time, non-dual shift and no self shift. Those shifts are less dramatic in a way. Like they don't run up to me and be like, oh my God, it's just all the suffering's gone and, tears and joy. Like that does happen sometimes with the first shift, with the first awakening. It can be really dramatic because of the contrast. But these later shifts aren't like that. It's subtle in that the person will look very, very calm. But what they'll tell me is very obviously a shift in perception that's dramatic's not the word I want to use. It's remarkable. And they feel that it's remarkable. They're just often in like this kind of wonder, like, oh, wow, I've heard you say this, but I didn't realize it was really just this. Like I heard you say no distance, but I really didn't know what no distance meant until right now. And it's like always this way. And they're just kind of in this wonder that doesn't really go away. So that's a different kind of response often. But that's what happens when that very subtle but very persistent layer of the one experiencing, the one seeing, the one thinking even, right? The one who has a spiritual life, all of that, when that just goes, like so much goes with it, but also such remarkable beauty is revealed. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Good comments today. This is Major Cultural Divide. I guess my problem is that when it's raining and miserable cold and I'm nauseous and haven't slept and I'm depressed, then this is it. And I don't want this to be it. Yeah. But it still is it. Right? A big part of this is seeing the cost of actually believing that you can do anything about it. That might sound hopeless, but it's not hopeless. What's hopeless is the endless running into the mind, into these mental caverns and these corridors of delusion over and over and over and over about the most mundane, simple day-to-day things too, right? I'm not saying that your experience is simple and mundane in this setting, but we do it all day long, right? Humans do this all the time. And that's the tragedy to me, right? Seeing that sometimes things are uncomfortable and sometimes things are comfortable and sometimes they feel good and sometimes they feel bad. And there's no one that needs to do anything about it. That is true freedom. But it feels like freedom. It's not a philosophical stance. It's not a positive affirmation. It is felt freedom. Strangely, something really changes about it, about experience when that drops. You're talking about essentially the second aggregate. I don't know if you're a channel member. I don't think you are, but I have a series on the aggregates, the Heart Sutra and the aggregates in my patron circle thing. But anyway, that is the second aggregate you're talking about, that it is actually empty. There's no one that can be found, no faculty of any kind, actually, not consciousness, no background or substratum, no awareness. Nothing will be found that actually hinges on that distinction of desirable, undesirable, or neutral. Anyway. Okay. This one's from Ball Smasher. Right on. Speak the name and he appears. Dude, this seems like a point of focus, like my attention constantly resides in thoughts. Yeah. And just to see that is good. It's so common. Most people have this, right? Some maybe more than others, but it's so common. And it's amazing how we can totally be oblivious to it until you're not, right? And you're like, holy shit. So, like my attention constantly resides in thought. I move it to here and now, and it wakes me up for a short while. That's awesome. Then again, I'm asleep in the mind. Do you think that this may be some sort of physical pull into the mind instead of inside the brain that can be flipped to the present moment? Like two magnets, one the mind, another the present moment. Here I don't know, but okay. Yes, though, but not through the paradigm you're thinking. It's like you're not going to think that into happening. But I will say the awakening feels very much like that. It's just this weird reversal where what felt like always moving away, pushing away, distancing and creating thoughts to like interface with the world and thinking that's the world. It's just like no interest in that. And all of a sudden everything reverses and it's like you just move toward reality and you're facing reality all the time. You're just moving into it. And it's like you are it. And there is no separation anymore. There's no pulling back or dissociation, really. It doesn't seem like for a while. And that flip is very viscerally obvious, palpable. So I like the way you said that. Okay. That's it for now. Thank you all for your comments, your viewers, or your viewership, your views, your likes and subscribes, all the fun things. And I will keep reading your comments. I'll do these periodically.